I am Noah. It's day 7 inside the ark. It feels like we've been here for years, but in reality, it's only been a week. The days don't feel like days anymore. They feel long, heavy, slow, and yet too fast at the same time. I woke up early, like I always do. The sound of the animals moving and the creaking of the ark were already there. The usual sounds. The smell of wet wood and animals filled the air. The walls of the ark feel closer every day, like it's getting smaller. I walked quietly to check on the animals. The goats were calm, but the lions seemed restless. Even the birds were quiet, not chirping like they normally do. Something was off today. The air was heavier. It felt like we were all holding our breath, waiting for something to happen. I went to check on my family. The kids were still asleep. Nama was up, sitting by the window, staring out at the endless water. I could tell she wasn't just looking at the water. She was thinking about something that was making her sad, something she couldn't shake. "Are you all right?" I asked her. She turned and smiled faintly, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "I'm fine," she said, but I knew she wasn't. "It's just that the kids haven't been laughing lately." Her words hit me harder than I thought they would. It was true. The children had stopped laughing. They hadn't played, hadn't made any noise like they usually did. They were quieter now, so much quieter. I didn't know how to answer her. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what was happening to us. As I was standing there, Sem woke up. He rubbed his eyes and looked at me. "Dad," he said softly, "why are we still here?" I didn't have an answer for him. What was I supposed to say? The truth was, I didn't know either. I didn't know when the water would go away, or when we would see land again. I didn't know if we'd ever see it. All I could tell him was what I always told him: "Soon, son, soon." But the look on his face told me he didn't believe me. He didn't believe any of us anymore. The world outside the ark was different now. The silence inside the ark felt like it was swallowing everything. Even the animals seemed to sense it. If you're still reading this, I ask that you subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. It helps me keep this diary alive, knowing that someone is here with me, hearing these words. I went to check on the animals again. This time, I didn't just check their food or water. I stood there, looking at them, trying to understand. The goats, the lions, the doves, they were all looking at me in a way that felt different. Their eyes weren't calm anymore. They were filled with fear. But fear of what? I didn't know. I walked down the long corridors of the ark, looking for something, anything that could explain why the animals, the children, and even Nama felt so different. That's when I heard it. A soft sound coming from one of the animal stalls. At first, I thought it was just the wind, or the animals moving. But then it came again. A small, almost silent noise. It was like someone was walking inside the ark. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. Just the usual sounds of the ark, the creaking wood, the soft snoring of the animals, the occasional shuffle of feet. But something in the air felt off. The silence was thick. It was too quiet. I went back to the family, but as I passed the dove stall, one of the doors was open. I checked it quickly, but I didn't see anything unusual. The door had been latched tightly before, but now it was open, just a little. How did that happen? I closed the door carefully and continued on. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When I got back to the family, Nama was looking at me with concern. "No," she said. "What's going on? What's wrong?" I didn't know how to answer her. I didn't have the answers, but I did know one thing. Something was inside the ark, and it wasn't supposed to be here. It's Noah again. It's now day 7 in the ark. I woke up early, as I always do. I walked around quietly, checking on the animals, making sure everything was in place. The usual sounds filled the air: creaking wood, the soft shuffle of animal feet, the quiet dripping of water from the roof. But today was different. I couldn't put my finger on why, but it felt heavier. The silence felt thicker, as though something was waiting. The animals, which used to make their usual noises, were unnaturally still. It was as if they, too, could feel it, whatever it was that had changed in the ark. I walked past the goat's pen. They were quiet, but their eyes were wide with fear. They didn't look at me like they usually did. They looked through me, as if they were seeing something I couldn't. I checked the doves next. One of their cages was open. I didn't know why. I always make sure they're securely locked. How had the door come open? I didn't understand it. Maybe I was just imagining things. After all, this place was strange enough already, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I went to see Nama and the kids. Nama was up, but the kids were still sleeping. I stood there for a moment, watching them. Their faces were peaceful in their sleep, but even in their dreams, they weren't laughing. I walked over to Nama and sat beside her. "Do you think they're all right?" I asked quietly. "They haven't laughed in days." Nama sighed, looking at the kids. "I don't know. No, they're not the same. They're not playing, not laughing like they used to. Something is happening to them, something I don't understand." I nodded, but I couldn't find the words to comfort her. I didn't understand what was happening either, but I knew one thing. It wasn't just the children. Something was different in the air, in the ark. It was like the ship itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, I heard a soft sound coming from the animal stalls. It was a quiet scraping, almost like something was scratching at the walls of the ark. I didn't want to investigate immediately. It could have been anything, the animals shifting, the wood expanding or contracting. But then I heard it again. It was faint, but unmistakable. I got up and walked toward the sound. The further I went, the louder it got. It was coming from the back of the ark, from the area where the barrels of water were kept. I could hear something shifting there, moving, like a whisper that couldn't be ignored. When I reached the back of the ark, I saw nothing unusual, just barrels, crates, and bags of grain. Everything seemed in place, but the sound persisted. A scraping, like nails on wood, faint but clear. I stood there for a long moment, trying to make sense of it, but there was nothing to see, nothing to explain the noise. I checked the crates and the water barrels again, just to be sure, but everything seemed fine. It was like the sound had never existed, like I had imagined it, but I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. When I returned to my family, Nama was sitting with the kids. They were all staring at the wall, silent. The quiet was unbearable. I couldn't remember the last time I heard them laugh, the last time we had any moment of lightness. I sat down beside Nama. "I think something's in here with us," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. Nama looked at me, confused and worried. "What do you mean? Something like what?" "I don't know," I replied. "I heard something in the ark, something that isn't right. It's not the animals, not the storm. It's something else." Nama shook her head. "No, it's just the silence. The silence is making us imagine things." But I knew it wasn't just the silence. The silence felt alive, and in that silence, something was waiting. Later, as the day wore on, I kept hearing that strange sound again. It wasn't constant, but it was persistent. It seemed to come from different parts of the ark, as though it was moving, following me. I didn't know what to make of it. It was impossible to ignore, but impossible to find the source. I walked around the ark, checking every room, every space, but there was nothing. The animals were restless, but they weren't the cause of the sound. I began to feel like I was chasing shadows, trying to find something that wasn't there, but still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The kids didn't say anything, but I could see the fear in their eyes. They were quieter too, more withdrawn. Every now and then, one of them would look over at me, as though they were waiting for me to tell them it was all okay. But I didn't know what to say anymore. How could I reassure them when I wasn't sure myself? I went back to Nama and told her what had happened. "I think it's inside the ark with us," I said, my voice heavy. "I think something is here, watching us." Nama didn't respond right away. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with worry. "What do we do?" No. I didn't know what to do. The ark was supposed to be a place of safety, a refuge from the storm. But now, it felt like a prison. A prison with walls that were closing in on us. And the thing that was outside the ark wasn't the storm anymore. The real threat was here inside, moving in the shadows. It's Noah again, and it's been a long day. The ark is quieter than usual, but not in the peaceful way it sometimes gets when the storm comes. No, today's quiet is unsettling, like something is hiding in the corners, something watching us. The silence is thick, like it's wrapping around us, squeezing just a little tighter with each passing moment. I woke up early, as I always do. The animals were already moving around, but the usual sounds of the ark, the soft shuffling of feet, the occasional clatter of hooves were muffled. The air feels heavier now, thick with something I can't quite explain. I walked to the back of the ark, checking the animals and making sure everything was in place. But something was off. The goats were bleating more than usual, the doves seemed restless, and even the lions were pacing in their cages, their eyes wide with the kind of unease that I hadn't seen before. The strange tapping sound I had heard the night before was back. At first, it was faint, just a soft scraping sound against the walls, but then it grew louder, like something or someone was moving around in the shadows of the ark. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to find out what it was. I checked the animal pens, the food stores, and the water barrels. Everything seemed fine, but the sound wouldn't stop. It was like it was following me, moving through the ark, getting louder as I walked. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When I returned to the family, Nama was sitting by the window, staring out at the water. She looked as tired as I felt. Her eyes met mine as I walked in, and for a moment, we both just sat there in silence, not knowing what to say. "What's happening, No?" she asked quietly. "Why is it so quiet in here?" "The children haven't said a word all day." I looked at the kids. They were sitting together, huddled on one of the benches, their faces pale, their eyes dull with fear. They weren't playing, weren't laughing, weren't even talking. They just stared out at the endless water, as if they were waiting for something that wasn't coming. "I don't know," I said, my voice tight, "but I feel it too. There's something inside the ark with us, Nama. Something that shouldn't be here." She looked at me with a mixture of worry and confusion. "What do you mean? Are we in danger?" "I don't know," I replied, my heart racing. "But I don't think we're alone in here." Later in the day, I decided to investigate again. I couldn't just sit here and let the fear grow without doing something. I went to check the animals once more, this time paying closer attention to their behavior. The goats were still unsettled, the lions were pacing back and forth, and the doves were fluttering nervously in their cages. But it wasn't just the animals that were acting strange, it was everything. The ark itself felt different, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something. I walked through the long hallways of the ark, checking every corner, every crack. The sound was there again, faint at first, but growing louder as I moved deeper into the ship. The soft scraping, like someone or something was tapping on the wood, trying to get our attention. I stopped in front of the pens, trying to find the source of the noise. The animals were quiet now, as though they too were waiting for something to happen. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, listening. And then, just as I thought I was imagining things, I heard it again. The tapping. This time, it was louder, more insistent, as though something was trying to break through. I turned quickly, my heart pounding. There was nothing there. Nothing but the darkness of the ark. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was there, hiding in the shadows. I returned to the family, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. "Nama," I said, my voice shaking. "There's something in here. I don't know what it is, but it's real. I've heard it. I've felt it." She looked at me, her eyes wide with concern. "What are we going to do?" "I don't know," I said, sitting down next to her. "But we can't ignore it anymore. It's getting closer, and I don't know what it wants." The children were still sitting quietly, their faces pale and drawn. They weren't playing, weren't laughing. They were just waiting for something to happen, waiting for something to change. But nothing changed. The silence remained, thick and suffocating, pressing in on us from all sides. I walked to the back of the ark again, checking every corner, every crevice. The tapping was getting loud, more persistent, like something was trying to break through. But when I reached the spot where the sound had come from, there was nothing there. Nothing but the same dark shadows, the same empty space. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do. But I knew one thing for sure. Something was in here with us. Something that shouldn't be. And it was waiting for us to make a move. It's Noah again. And it's now day 7 in the ark. Everything is quieter today. The animals are restless. The air is thick. And the silence is so deep that it feels like it's pressing against my chest. The tapping sound that started a few days ago is now constant. It comes and goes, but it never fully stops. It's like it's moving through the ark, from one side to the other, as if something is walking around, looking for us. I woke up early again this morning. I couldn't sleep. The fear inside the ark is growing, and it's starting to affect everyone. The children are quieter than usual. They don't play. They don't laugh. They don't even speak much anymore. They're just waiting for something to happen, waiting for something to change. But nothing changes. The water is still out there, and the ark is still floating, but the fear inside is growing every day. Nama is worried. I can see it in her eyes. She's trying to stay strong for the children, but I know she feels the same fear that I do. I know she feels the weight of the silence, the pressure of being trapped inside this giant wooden ship, surrounded by water, with no way of knowing when it will end. I went to check on the animals again today. The goats are still uneasy, the horses are nervous, and the lions are pacing, their eyes wide with fear. I tried to calm them, but it's no use. They know something is wrong, just like we do. There's something inside this ark, something that shouldn't be here, and it's starting to affect everyone. I went back to the back of the ark, the area where I heard the tapping last night. I wanted to see if I could figure out where it was coming from. The sound is always faint, but it's getting louder. I can't ignore it anymore. I have to know what it is. I walked through the dark, narrow corridors of the ark, my heart pounding in my chest. The silence was so thick that I could almost hear my own heartbeat. The tapping was louder now, closer, like something was following me. But when I turned around, there was nothing there. I reached the back of the ark, where the barrels of water are stored. The sound seemed to be coming from there. I looked around, but the space was empty. There was nothing but barrels and crates, and the soft creaking of the ark. But then, I saw it. There, on the floor, was a small piece of straw, twisted into a tiny braid. I picked it up, my hands trembling. The straw was fresh, still warm. It hadn't been here long, and it wasn't just any piece of straw. It was braided carefully, as if someone had taken their time to weave it. I looked around again, but there was no sign of anyone. The animals were quiet now, but I could feel the tension building, like something was about to break. I went back to the family, but this time, couldn't hide the fear I felt. The kids were sitting in the same spot, staring at the walls, their faces pale and drawn. They looked at me as I walked in, but none of them spoke. It was like they were waiting for me to tell them everything was okay. But I didn't know how to tell them that everything was fine when I knew that it wasn't. Nama saw the look on my face and immediately stood up. "What happened?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "There's something in here with us," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't know what it is, but it's real. I've heard it. I've seen it." Nama looked at me unsure. "What are you saying? What's happening?" "No, I don't know," I said. "But I can't ignore it anymore. The kids have been hearing it too. The tapping, the footsteps, the shadows moving. It's not just in my head. It's real." She stepped closer, her face filled with worry. "What do we do?" "I don't know what we can do," I replied. "But we can't stay here like this. We have to find out what's going on. We have to figure out what's inside this ark with us." Nama nodded slowly, her eyes wide with fear. She didn't say anything, but I could see that she knew we couldn't ignore this anymore. We couldn't pretend that everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. The tapping was louder now, almost constant. It was coming from all directions, like something was moving around the ark, watching us. I kept hearing the faint sound of footsteps, light but steady, as if someone small was walking through the ship, just out of sight. I tried to ignore it, tried to go back to sleep, but it was impossible. The fear was too strong, too real. I got up, grabbed my lantern, and went back to the back of the ark. I had to find out what was causing the sound. I had to know what was inside the ark with us. I walked through the dark corridors again, the tapping growing louder with every step. It was everywhere now, coming from the walls, the floors, the ceiling. But when I reached the spot where the sound seemed to be coming from, there was nothing there, just the same empty space, the same dark shadows, the same creaking wood. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Something was wrong. Something was in here with us, and I didn't know what it was. I had to know. I had to find out.